The morning alarm buzzed loudly in room 247 of Seoul Interstellar University. Kim Jae-won rolled over in his small bed and squinted at the clock. It was 6:30 a.m. and his first class started at 8 hours. He groaned and sat up slowly. Across the room, his roommate Keth was already awake. The tall alien stood near the window, his blue crystal-like skin catching the early sunlight. Keth's body was almost 7 feet tall and thin like a tree branch. His skin was see-through in some places, and Jae-won could see strange lights moving under it like slow lightning. "Good morning, Jae-won," Keith said. His voice had a musical quality that reminded Jae-won of wind chimes. "Did you finish the quantum navigation homework?" Jae-won rubbed his eyes and stretched. "I tried, but I still don't understand how to fold space in 12 dimensions. My brain can only think in 3 dimensions. Keth's skin shifted from blue to a lighter shade that Jae-won had learned meant confusion or surprise. "It is quite simple. You just need to visualize the mathematical relationships between dimensional planes." "Easy for you to say," Jae-won muttered as he got out of bed. "Your people have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. We humans just figured out how to leave our solar system 50 years ago. This was true. Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Educational Exchange Program in 2157. For most alien species, humans were still considered a very young and primitive race. They had technology, but it was basic compared to civilizations that had mastered faster than light travel centuries ago." Jae-won walked to the small bathroom they shared. The mirror showed a tired young man with messy black hair and dark circles under his eyes. At 23, he was one of the older students in the program. Most aliens lived much longer than humans, so their students could be hundreds of years old while still being considered young. When Jae-won came out of the bathroom, Keth was arranging his study materials. The alien used tools that looked like glowing crystals instead of books or computers. When Keith touched them, holographic images appeared in the air showing star maps and complex equations. "I still don't understand how those work," Jae-won said, pointing at the crystals. "They are memory storage units," Keth explained patiently. "They connect directly to my nervous system and allow me to access information instantly." "Do humans not have similar technology?" Jae-won held up his tablet computer. "This is about as advanced as we get, and I still have to read everything the slow way." Keth's skin shifted to a purple color that meant he was thinking. "Your species is quite interesting. Most races develop neural interface technology early in their advancement, but humans seem to rely on external tools." They left their room and walked down the hallway toward the cafeteria. The dormitory was designed to accommodate many different types of beings. Some rooms had pools for aquatic students. Others had special atmosphere controls for species that breathed different gases. The hallways were wide and tall to fit students of various sizes. In the cafeteria, Jae-won got his usual breakfast of rice, eggs, and kimchi. The university tried to provide food from each student's home world, though some alien foods looked very strange to human eyes. He sat at a table with other human students. "How's living with Keth?" asked Lee So-hee, a girl from Busan who was studying xenobiology. She was small and cheerful with short hair and glasses. "He's nice enough," Jae-won replied, "but sometimes I feel like he thinks I'm a pet or something. Yesterday he asked if all humans need to sleep every day because he thought it was inefficient." Park Hyun-woo, a tall boy studying engineering, laughed. "My roommate Vex is from the Nexus civilization. Half his body is machine parts. He keeps asking why humans haven't upgraded themselves with better computers and stronger bodies. He thinks we're choosing to be weak." "They don't understand us," said Cha Min-seo, who was studying interstellar law. "To them, we're like children who just learned to walk." Jae-won looked around the cafeteria. At other tables, alien students sat in their own groups. The Verlians like Keth clustered together, their crystal bodies creating small light shows as they communicated. The Delph students, who looked like tall blue people with gills, sat near special water dispensers. The Nexus students had cables connecting their heads together, sharing thoughts directly. None of the alien groups mixed with the humans. It wasn't that they were mean or rude. They were polite and helpful when asked. But there was always a feeling that they saw humans as less advanced, less capable. After breakfast, Jae-won went to his advanced quantum navigation class. The classroom was a large dome with no desks or chairs. Instead, students floated in special fields that let them move in 3 dimensions while working with holographic star maps. Professor Zeth, a Verlian with silver skin, began the lesson. Today we will practice calculating hyperspace jumps between star systems. Remember, you must account for gravitational interference, solar wind patterns, and dimensional stability. The alien students immediately began working. Their hands moved through the air, manipulating glowing equations and star charts with ease. Jaewon watched Nira, a Delft student, solve a complex navigation problem in less than 2 minutes. Jaewon stared at his own holographic display. The math was incredibly complicated. He could barely understand what the symbols meant, let alone solve the equations. He tried for 20 minutes but made no progress. Having trouble, Jaewon? Professor Zeth floated over to him. The alien's silver skin showed patterns that Jaewon had learned meant mild concern. I don't understand how to calculate the dimensional fold coefficients, Jaewon admitted. Professor Zeth's skin shifted to show patience. Humans process information differently than most species. Perhaps you should focus on simpler navigation problems first. There is no shame in starting with basic calculations. Jaewon felt his cheeks turn red with embarrassment. Around him, alien students continued working on advanced problems while he was told to go back to basics. He heard Vox, a Nexus student, whisper to his friend, I heard human brains can only hold limited information. Maybe that's why they struggle with complex math. The comment stung because Jaewon knew it wasn't entirely wrong. Humans did seem to learn more slowly than other species. They couldn't interface directly with computers like the Nexus people. They couldn't communicate through harmonic frequencies like the Verlians. They couldn't process multiple data streams simultaneously like the Delph. But Jaewon was determined not to give up. He had worked hard to get into this program. Earth had only been allowed to send 50 students, and the competition had been fierce. He wasn't going to quit just because the material was difficult. After class, Keth found him in the library. I saw you struggling today. Would you like help with the quantum navigation homework? Jaewon looked up from his tablet, where he had been trying to understand the basic principles for hours. Thanks, but I need to figure this out myself. Keth's skin showed confusion again. Why? Collaboration is more efficient than individual struggle. Because I need to prove that humans can do this too, Jaewon said. Everyone thinks we're too primitive to understand advanced science. I want to show them we're not. Keth settled into a chair nearby, his tall frame folding awkwardly. You care very much about what others think, don't you? My people focus on efficiency and logic. What others think is less important than achieving results. Jaewon smiled. That's probably why you're better at this than I am. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jaewon continued working on his homework while Keth studied his own materials. Despite their differences, Jaewon was starting to like his strange roommate. Even if Keth didn't fully understand humans, at least he was trying to be kind. As the day ended, Jaewon realized he still hadn't solved a single navigation problem correctly. But he wasn't ready to give up. Tomorrow he would try again. He had to believe that humans belonged among the stars, even if it took them longer to figure out how to navigate them. 3 weeks had passed since the semester began, and midterm exams were approaching fast. Jaewon sat at his desk in the dormitory room, surrounded by books, tablets, and empty coffee cups. His eyes were red and tired. He had not slept properly in 3 days. Jaewon, you look terrible, said Lee Sohee when she visited his room that morning. When was the last time you ate a real meal? Jaewon rubbed his face and looked at her through tired eyes. I had some crackers yesterday. Or was that the day before? I can't remember. Sohee frowned and sat on his bed. This is crazy. You're going to make yourself sick. I have to finish this astrophysics project, Jaewon said, pointing at his computer screen. It's worth 40% of my grade. If I fail this class, they might kick me out of the program. The project was about calculating energy requirements for terraforming dead planets. It was the kind of work that advanced alien civilizations did regularly, but for humans it was almost impossible. The math involved 17 different variables and required understanding of atmospheric chemistry, gravitational physics, and biological systems. Maybe you should ask Keth for help, Sohee suggested. No, Jaewon said firmly. I need to do this myself. I'm tired of everyone thinking humans are stupid. Sohee sighed. You're not stupid, Jaewon. You're just exhausted. Please get some sleep. After Sohee left, Jaewon continued working. The numbers on his screen seemed to swim around like tiny fish. He drank more coffee and tried to focus. Outside his window, he could see other students walking around the campus looking relaxed and happy. Most of them were aliens who found the coursework easy. Keth had left that morning for a 3-day field trip to the lunar research stations. J1 was glad to be alone. He could work without feeling embarrassed about how slowly he progressed compared to his roommate. By the second night without sleep, J1 was having trouble thinking clearly. He would read the same paragraph 5 times and still not understand it. His hands shook when he tried to write notes. But he kept working because he was afraid to stop. On the 3rd day, something strange began to happen. Even though J1 felt terrible, his mind seemed to be working differently. He started seeing patterns in the mathematical equations that he hadn't noticed before. Solutions to problems appeared in his head without him consciously thinking about them. He wrote down formula after formula, his hand moving almost by itself across the paper. The work felt automatic, like his brain was running on some kind of hidden program. He didn't fully understand what he was writing, but somehow he knew it was correct. That evening, Keth returned from the lunar stations earlier than expected. There had been a problem with the transport schedule, so the field trip ended a day early. Keth was looking forward to telling J1 about the amazing crystal formations they had studied on the moon. The dormitory's privacy system was supposed to announce when roommates returned, but there was a malfunction in the building's computer network. The door to room 247 opened silently. Keth stepped inside and immediately froze. Something was very wrong. J1 was sitting at his desk, but he appeared to be unconscious. His eyes were closed and his head was tilted forward slightly. But his right hand was moving steadily across a piece of paper, writing complex mathematical equations. The movements were smooth and precise, not like someone who was asleep. Keth's skin shifted to a dark blue color that showed alarm. He had never seen anything like this before. As a Verlian, Keth did not sleep the way humans did. His people entered a rest state where their minds became quiet and still. They certainly did not continue working while unconscious. Keth moved closer to examine what J1 was writing. The equations were incredibly advanced, far beyond what most students in their program could understand. They dealt with quantum energy manipulation and dimensional mathematics. Some of the formulas looked similar to techniques that only master-level Verlian scientists knew, but that was impossible. J1 struggled with basic navigation problems. How could he be writing advanced theoretical physics while unconscious? Keth checked J1's vital signs using a medical scanner from his study kit. What he found was even more disturbing. J1's body temperature had dropped several degrees below normal human levels. His heart rate was extremely slow, barely 30 beats per minute. His breathing was so shallow that it was almost undetectable. Yet the scanner showed that J1's brain activity was incredibly high, higher than Keth had ever seen in any species. The human's mind was working at a level that should have been impossible for someone who appeared to be unconscious. Keth watched in fascination and growing concern as J1 continued writing. The hand movements never paused or hesitated. It was as if some other intelligence was controlling J1's body, while his conscious mind was completely shut down. After 20 more minutes, J1's hand suddenly stopped moving. His body swayed slightly in the chair. Keth quickly reached out to steady him and gently shook his shoulder. J1? J1, wake up. J1's eyes opened slowly. He looked confused and disoriented. Keth, when did you get back? Just now. How are you feeling? J1 stretched and yawned. Tired, really tired. I think I fell asleep at my desk. He looked down at the papers in front of him and frowned. What is all this? Keth stared at him. You do not remember writing these equations? J1 picked up the papers and studied them. His eyes grew wide. I didn't write this. This is way too advanced for me. These formulas are about quantum energy manipulation. I don't even know what half these symbols mean. But I watched you write them, Keth said. You were unconscious, but your hand kept moving. You wrote for almost an hour. J1 shook his head. That's impossible. Humans can't do things while they're asleep. Well, some people walk in their sleep, but they don't solve complex math problems. Keth's skin shifted through several colors as he processed what he had witnessed. May I examine these equations more carefully? Sure, but I'm telling you I didn't write them. Keth took the papers and spread them across his own desk. He activated his crystal study tools and began analyzing the mathematical work. As he worked, his skin grew brighter with excitement. J1, these equations are not just advanced. They are revolutionary. This formula here, he pointed to a section near the bottom of the page. It shows a new method for creating stable energy fields around planets. It could reduce terraforming costs by 70%. What? Jaywin got up and looked over Keth's shoulder. Are you sure? Very sure. And this section about dimensional folding. It is more elegant than anything my people have developed. Wherever these ideas came from, they represent a major breakthrough in astrophysics. Jaywon sat down heavily on his bed. But I don't understand any of it. How could I write something I don't understand? Keth turned to face him, his skin now showing a complex pattern of colors that meant deep thought and confusion. I do not know. But what I saw tonight challenges everything I thought I knew about human capabilities. They sat in silence for several minutes, both trying to make sense of what had happened. Finally, Jaywon spoke. Maybe we should show this to Professor Yoon. She might be able to explain it. Professor Yoon Min-jae was the only human faculty member at Seoul Interstellar University. She taught basic physics and served as an advisor to human students. If anyone could understand what had happened, it would be her. Keth nodded. That is a good idea. But Jaywon, I think you should be prepared for the possibility that this incident means something very important. Something that could change how the galaxy views your species. Jaywon looked at the equations again, still unable to believe he had written them. What do you mean? I mean that maybe humans are not as primitive as everyone believes. Maybe your minds work in ways we have never understood. As they prepared for bed, both roommates found it difficult to sleep. Jaywon was exhausted but too confused to rest easily. Keth was excited but also worried about what this discovery might mean for his friendship with the human. Neither of them realized that what had happened in room 247 that night would soon change everything they thought. They knew about intelligence, consciousness, and the true potential of the human mind. The next morning, Jaywon and Keth went to see Professor Yoon Min-jae in her office. Professor Yoon was a small woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been one of the first humans to earn a degree in interstellar physics, and she understood better than most how difficult it was for humans to keep up with alien students. Come in, boys, she said when they knocked on her door. You both look worried. What can I help you with? Keth and Jaywon sat down in the chairs across from her desk. Jaywon felt nervous about explaining what had happened. It sounded crazy even to him. Professor Yoon, Jaywon began slowly. Something strange happened last night. I was working on my astrophysics project and I fell asleep at my desk. But Keth says I kept working while I was unconscious. Professor Yoon raised her eyebrows. Working while unconscious? What do you mean? Keth spoke up. I observed Jaywon writing complex mathematical equations for nearly an hour, while his eyes were closed and his vital signs indicated deep unconsciousness. His brain activity was extremely high, but his body appeared to be in a rest state. That's impossible, Professor Yoon said. Humans don't function that way. Jaywon pulled out the papers he had supposedly written. This is what I produced. But I don't remember writing any of it, and I don't understand what most of it means. Professor Yoon took the papers and began reading. As her eyes moved across the equations, her expression changed from confusion to amazement. She read through the pages twice before looking up at them. Where did you get these? She asked. I wrote them, Jaywon said. At least that's what Keth tells me. But I was unconscious. Professor Yoon stood up and walked to the window. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she turned back to them. Jaywon, these equations represent breakthrough work in planetary terraforming. The energy efficiency calculations alone could revolutionize how we approach dead world colonization. This is graduate level work. No, it's beyond graduate level. This is the kind of research that senior scientists spend years developing. But I'm just an undergraduate student, Jaywon protested, and not even a good one. I've been struggling with basic coursework all semester. That's what makes this so extraordinary, Professor Yoon said. She sat back down and looked at both of them carefully. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. For the next hour, Professor Yoon questioned Jaywon about his sleep patterns, his study habits, and his dreams. She asked Keth to describe exactly what he had observed. She made detailed notes and asked them to repeat parts of their story several times. Have you ever experienced anything like this before, Jaywon? She asked. Jaywon thought carefully. Sometimes I wake up with ideas about problems I was working on the night before, but I always assumed that was normal. What kind of ideas? Well, last month I was stuck on a physics problem about orbital mechanics. I went to bed frustrated, and when I woke up I knew how to solve it. I thought my brain had just processed the information while I slept. Professor Yoon exchanged a meaningful look with Keth. Keth, does your species process information during rest periods? No, Keth replied. During rest, our minds become quiet and still. We do not think or process new information. Most species work this way. Most species, Professor Yoon repeated thoughtfully, but not humans. She got up and went to her computer. I'm going to contact some colleagues. This needs to be studied properly. Over the next few days, Jae-won found himself the subject of intense scientific interest. Professor Yoon brought in other human faculty members from different universities. They ran tests on Jae-won's brain activity and sleep patterns. They interviewed other human students about their experiences with problem-solving during sleep. What they discovered amazed everyone, including the humans themselves. Park Hyun-woo admitted that he often woke up with solutions to engineering problems that had stumped him the day before. Cha Min-seo revealed that she sometimes dreamed about legal cases and found brilliant arguments in her dreams. Even Lee So-hee confessed that her best insights about alien biology came to her during sleep. We all thought this was normal, So-hee said during one of the research sessions. Don't other species do this too? No, said Dr. Chen, a human neurologist who had been called in to study the phenomenon. Other species rest their minds during sleep. But human brains remain active. You have something called REM sleep, where you dream and process information unconsciously. Dr. Chen showed them brain scans comparing human sleep patterns to those of other species. Look at these images. When a Verlian rests, brain activity drops to almost nothing. Same with Delph Nexus and other species. But human brains during REM sleep show activity levels sometimes higher than when you're awake. Keth studied the brain scans with fascination. So while we rest, humans continue to think and solve problems? Exactly, Dr. Chen said. And not just think. They process information in ways that conscious thought cannot achieve. During dreams, the human brain makes connections between ideas that seem unrelated. It solves problems through intuition and creativity rather than pure logic. Professor Yoon added, there's something else. Humans are the only known species that evolved under constant survival pressure. While other civilizations developed in stable environments, humans faced predators, climate changes, and resource competition for millions of years. Your brains evolved to find creative solutions to impossible problems. This revelation excited the human researchers, but it made the alien faculty members uncomfortable. For centuries, they had assumed that logical, computational thinking was the highest form of intelligence. The idea that chaotic, emotional, dream-based processing could produce superior results challenged their fundamental beliefs about consciousness. Word of the discovery began to spread through the university. Alien students who had dismissed humans as primitive now looked at them with new curiosity. Some were fascinated, others were skeptical. It must be a mistake, said Vox, the Nexus student with machine parts integrated into his body. Unconscious problem-solving is inefficient. Pure computational logic is superior. But Nira, the Delph student, was more open-minded. Maybe there are different types of intelligence. Maybe the universe is more complex than we understood. Jae-won found the attention overwhelming. He had gone from being seen as a struggling student to being treated like a scientific phenomenon. Other human students looked to him for leadership, but he didn't feel ready for that responsibility. I'm still the same person, he told Keth one evening as they sat in their room. I still don't understand most of my coursework. I still struggle with basic navigation problems. Keth's skin showed thoughtful patterns. But now we know why you struggle. Your mind works differently than ours. We process information through direct logical analysis. You process it through unconscious creativity. Neither method is better or worse. They are simply different approaches to understanding the universe. Do you really believe that? Jae-won asked. Keth was quiet for a moment. I am beginning to. For my entire life, I believed that logical thinking was the only path to truth. But your equations from that night, they showed insights that pure logic had never achieved. Perhaps your species has something that ours lacks, and what's that? The ability to find answers in chaos, to see patterns where others see randomness, to solve problems through intuition rather than calculation. That night, Jae-won lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. A month ago, he had felt like a failure, struggling to keep up with his alien classmates. Now scientists were studying his brain patterns and calling his species uniquely gifted. But the most important change wasn't how others saw him. It was how he was beginning to see himself. Maybe humans weren't behind other species. Maybe they were just different. And maybe different didn't mean worse. As he drifted off to sleep, Jaewon wondered what problems his unconscious mind would solve tonight. For the first time since arriving at the university, he looked forward to dreaming. News of Jaewon's unconscious problem-solving abilities spread quickly through Seoul Interstellar University. Within a week, students and faculty from across the galaxy had heard about the human who could solve complex equations while sleeping. Some believed the reports, but many were skeptical. "It has to be a hoax," said Drex, a senior student from the Corvani Empire. "Unconscious problem-solving violates basic principles of cognitive science." "I agree," added Zara, a Nexus graduate student. "Intelligence requires conscious processing. What they claim about humans is scientifically impossible." The debate became so heated that the university administration decided to conduct an official experiment. They would present human and alien students with the same unsolved problem and compare their approaches and results. Professor Yoon announced the test to Jaewon and the other human students during their weekly meeting. "The faculty has chosen a problem that has puzzled galactic scientists for over 200 years," she explained. "How to create stable, permanent wormholes for instantaneous travel between distant star systems." Park Hyunwoo whistled softly. "That's one of the biggest challenges in astrophysics. Dozens of civilizations have tried to solve it. Which is exactly why it's a fair test," Professor Yoon said. "No species has an advantage because no one has solved it yet." Cha Min-seo raised her hand. "What are the rules?" "Alien students will work in teams using their traditional methods: computational analysis, logical reasoning, and advanced technology. Human students will also work as a team, but with one requirement: you must sleep on the problem, literally." Lee So-hee looked nervous. "What if our unconscious minds can't solve it? What if we just have normal dreams? Then we'll learn something important about the limits of human consciousness," Professor Yoon said. "But I have a feeling you might surprise everyone, including yourselves." The test was scheduled for the following week. The university set up a special laboratory with monitoring equipment to track brain activity, vital signs, and work progress. Representatives from several galactic universities would observe the experiment remotely. Jaewon felt enormous pressure. The reputation of his entire species seemed to rest on whether he and his fellow human students could solve an impossible problem while unconscious. "I'm scared," he admitted to Keth the night before the test. "What if I fail? What if it turns out that night was just a fluke?" Keth's skin showed calming blue patterns. "Do not focus on failure. Focus on the process. Whether you solve the problem or not, you will demonstrate something important about human consciousness." The next morning, teams from 12 different species gathered in the main laboratory. The alien students had brought sophisticated computers, neural interfaces, and quantum calculation devices. The human students had notebooks, pencils, and sleeping bags. The contrast was almost comical. While alien teams set up complex equipment, the humans arranged comfortable places to sleep. Professor Zeth, the Verlian who taught advanced quantum navigation, presented the problem. Holographic displays showed the mathematical challenges involved in creating stable wormholes. The energy requirements were enormous. The gravitational stresses were nearly impossible to control, and the quantum mechanics involved systems that no current technology could manage. "You have 24 hours, Professor Zeth announced. Alien teams may work continuously. Human teams must include at least 8 hours of sleep time." The alien students immediately began working. Verlian crystals glowed as they processed complex calculations. Nexus students connected their cybernetic implants to quantum computers. Delph teams used fluid dynamic models to analyze space-time distortions. The humans, led by Jaewon, spent the first few hours studying the problem and taking notes. They discussed what they knew about wormhole physics and shared ideas about possible approaches. But as evening approached, they prepared to sleep. "This feels wrong," muttered Lim Dong-hyuk, a physics student from Daegu. "Everyone else is working, and we're going to bed." "Trust the process," Jaewon said, though he felt the same doubt. "Our brains work differently. We have to give our unconscious minds time to process the information." The humans lay down on their sleeping bags, while alien students continued working through the night. Monitoring equipment tracked their brainwaves, showing the distinctive patterns of REM sleep that no other species experienced. Keth volunteered to observe the human team throughout the night. He was fascinated by the complex brain activity that occurred during human sleep. Unlike the quiet rest periods of his own species, human minds remained incredibly active. Around 3 a.m., something remarkable began to happen. Jaewon started moving in his sleep. His hand reached for a notebook and began writing equations just as he had done weeks earlier. But he wasn't alone, so he was also writing in her sleep, working on biological aspects of wormhole travel. Hyunwoo was sketching engineering designs with his eyes closed. Most amazingly, the sleeping humans seemed to be collaborating unconsciously. When Jaewon wrote an equation about energy requirements, Hyunwoo would unconsciously design a device to meet those requirements. When Sohee solved a problem about biological effects of wormhole travel, Minseo would unconsciously write legal frameworks for regulating the technology. Keth watched in awe as the human team produced page after page of work, while completely unconscious. Their approaches were unlike anything he had seen from alien problem-solving methods. Instead of following logical step-by-step processes, the humans jumped between ideas in ways that seemed random but somehow connected. When morning came, the humans woke up and looked at what they had produced during the night. Like Jaewon's first experience, they had no conscious memory of writing the equations and designs. "Did I really write this?" Sohee asked, staring at pages of biological calculations in her own handwriting. "We all did," Hyunwoo said, examining his engineering sketches, "but I don't remember any of it." The alien teams had also worked through the night, but their progress was limited. Despite their advanced technology and logical methods, they had only managed to refine existing theories without breakthrough insights. Professor Yoon and a team of experts reviewed the work from both groups. The human team's unconscious collaboration had produced something unprecedented, a complete theoretical framework for stable wormhole generation. Their approach was revolutionary. Instead of trying to control the enormous energies involved in wormhole creation, they had found ways to use natural quantum fluctuations to stabilize the openings. Their biological research showed how living beings could safely travel through wormholes. Their engineering designs were simpler and more elegant than anything previously conceived. Most importantly, their legal and ethical framework addressed concerns that pure scientists had never considered, questions about who could use wormhole technology and how to prevent it from being weaponized. "This is extraordinary," announced Dr. Vex, the lead researcher from the Galactic Science Council, who had observed the experiment remotely. "The human team has not only solved the wormhole stability problem, they have created a comprehensive system for implementing the technology safely." The alien students were stunned. Fox, the Nexus student who had dismissed unconscious problem-solving as impossible, stared at the human team's work with his cybernetic eyes glowing. "How did you see these connections?" he asked. "My computational systems analyzed millions of possibilities, but I never considered using quantum fluctuations as stabilizing forces." "We didn't consciously see anything," Jaewon admitted. "Our minds found these solutions while we were unconscious." Drex, the Corvani student who had called the whole thing a hoax, was forced to reconsider his beliefs. "Your unconscious minds were able to process information and make connections that our conscious, logical analysis missed." Nira, the Delft student, was more thoughtful. "Perhaps intelligence is not just about computational power. Perhaps creativity and intuition are forms of intelligence that we have not properly understood." The results of the test changed everything at Seoul Interstellar University. Human students were no longer seen as struggling to keep up with their alien classmates. Instead, they were recognized as having unique cognitive abilities that could solve problems in ways that pure logic could not achieve. But the most profound change was in how the humans saw themselves. For the first time since joining the galactic community, they realized that their differences weren't weaknesses, they were strengths. "We don't think like them," Jaewon told his teammates after the experiment. "But maybe that's exactly what the universe needs." As news of the successful test spread across the galaxy, representatives from dozens of civilizations began requesting collaborations with human researchers. The species that had been dismissed as primitive were suddenly the most sought-after partners in the galactic scientific community. But for Jaewon, the most important recognition came from Keth, whose crystalline skin glowed with patterns of respect and admiration. "I was wrong about humans," Keth said that evening in their dormitory room. "Your species is not developing or primitive. You are simply different, And that difference makes you incredibly valuable to the galaxy. Jaewon smiled, finally feeling like he truly belonged among the stars. The success of the wormhole experiment sent shockwaves through the galactic scientific community. Within days, the human students found themselves at the center of unprecedented attention. Universities from across the galaxy requested video conferences with the team. Research institutions offered collaboration opportunities. Even governments wanted to understand how human consciousness worked. Jaewon sat in his dormitory room, staring at a list of interview requests that had grown to over 50 entries. The shy student who had struggled with basic navigation problems just weeks ago was now being called a revolutionary thinker. "I don't understand how this happened," he told Keth, who was organizing his own flood of requests from Verlian researchers. "A month ago, I was the worst student in our quantum physics class." Keth's skin showed thoughtful purple patterns. "You were not the worst student. You were simply being measured by the wrong standards. It would be like judging my people's intelligence based on how well we dream, something we cannot do." This comparison helped Jaewon understand what was really happening. For centuries, galactic civilization had defined intelligence as computational ability, logical processing, and conscious problem-solving. By these standards, humans appeared primitive because they were slower at calculations and couldn't interface directly with computers. But the wormhole experiment had revealed that intelligence came in many forms. The chaotic, emotional, dream-filled human consciousness could solve problems that pure logic couldn't touch. The revelation was causing a crisis among alien academics. Professor Zeth, who had taught advanced physics for over 2 centuries, found his fundamental beliefs about consciousness challenged. "I have spent my entire career believing that logical analysis was the highest form of thinking," he admitted, during a faculty meeting that Jaewon was asked to attend. "But these humans have shown capabilities that transcend logic entirely." Dr. Vex from the Galactic Science Council was even more troubled. "If unconscious problem-solving is superior to computational analysis, then our entire approach to research and education may be flawed." But not all aliens were ready to accept the implications. Some species doubled down on their beliefs about logical superiority. "One successful experiment does not prove anything," argued Commander Thrix from the Corvani Military Academy. "These humans got lucky. Their chaotic thinking cannot be replicated or controlled." This skepticism led to demands for more testing. Over the following weeks, human students were asked to tackle problem after problem while alien teams used traditional methods for comparison. The results were consistent and remarkable. When faced with complex, multivariable challenges that required creative solutions, humans consistently outperformed their alien counterparts. Their unconscious minds found elegant answers to problems that had stumped galactic civilization for generations. However, aliens still excelled at tasks requiring precise calculation, data processing, and systematic analysis. The revelation wasn't that humans were smarter. It was that different types of intelligence were suited to different types of problems. Park Hyunwoo summarized the discovery perfectly. "We're not better than them, and they're not better than us. We're just different. And the universe is big enough to need all kinds of thinking." But the most profound changes were happening within the alien students themselves. Many were experiencing something they had never felt before: intellectual humility. Vox, the Nexus student with cybernetic implants, approached Jaewon after a particularly challenging physics class. "I need to apologize," he said, his mechanical voice carrying unusual emotion. "I believed that consciousness was simply biological computation. I thought that upgrading my brain with machines made me superior to organic beings like yourself." "You don't need to apologize," Jaewon replied. "Your computational abilities are amazing. I could never process data as fast as you do. But you can see patterns I cannot. You can find solutions I would never consider. My enhancements made me better at calculation, but they also made me more rigid in my thinking." This conversation represented a larger shift happening throughout the university. Alien students began seeking out human partners for their projects. They realized that combining logical analysis with human creativity produced better results than either approach alone. Nira, the Delft student, started a study group that mixed species and thinking styles. "When we work together, we see problems from multiple angles," she explained. "Humans find innovative approaches, and we aliens figure out how to implement them systematically. The collaboration was transformative for everyone involved. Aliens learned to value intuition and creativity. Humans gained confidence in their analytical abilities. Most importantly, both groups discovered that their different approaches to consciousness were complementary, not competitive. Keth experienced perhaps the most dramatic personal change. His crystalline skin, which had always displayed logical patterns, began showing new colors and formations that reflected emotional and creative states. "I am learning to dream," he told Jaewon one evening. "Not like humans do, but in my own way. I am allowing my mind to make illogical connections, to consider possibilities that pure reason would reject." "How does it feel?" Jaewon asked. "Frightening and wonderful at the same time. For my entire life I have sought certainty and logical order. Now I'm discovering that uncertainty and chaos can lead to breakthrough insights." This personal transformation was happening throughout the galactic academic community. Species that had followed rigid logical frameworks for millennia were beginning to experiment with more flexible thinking styles. The implications extended far beyond academia. Galactic governments realized that their approach to problem-solving had been too narrow. Military strategists discovered that human creativity could devise tactics that conventional analysis couldn't predict. Engineers found that human intuition could identify design solutions that computer modeling missed. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had pursued a single vision of progress, based on technological advancement and logical thinking. The discovery of human consciousness suggested that evolution and progress could take many different forms. "We have been thinking about intelligence too narrowly," declared Dr. Yesh, the Grand Academic of the Galactic Education Council, in a statement that was broadcast across all member worlds. "The humans have taught us that consciousness is not a ladder to climb, but a spectrum to explore." As the semester continued, Jaewon found himself in a strange new position. The struggling student who had felt like he didn't belong was now seen as a representative of humanity's unique gifts. But he was careful not to let the attention go to his head. "I'm still the same person," he reminded himself during quiet moments. "I still have trouble with basic math, and I still don't understand half of what my unconscious mind produces." But Keth helped him see the bigger picture. "You represent something important, Jaewon, not because you are perfect, but because you show that intelligence comes in many forms. Your struggles with conscious problem-solving make your unconscious abilities even more remarkable. The revelation that human consciousness operated differently from all other known species was reshaping galactic civilization. Universities were redesigning their curricula to include courses on creative thinking and unconscious problem-solving. Research institutions were hiring human consultants to work alongside their traditional teams. Governments were seeking human advisors to help solve complex social and political problems. But the changes went deeper than practical applications. The discovery of human dream consciousness was forcing all species to reconsider fundamental questions about the nature of mind, intelligence, and reality itself. As Jaewon prepared for his final exams, he realized that the semester had taught him something more valuable than physics or mathematics. He had learned that being different wasn't a weakness to overcome, but a strength to embrace. The universe was vast and complex, full of challenges that required many different types of minds to solve. Humanity's chaotic, emotional, dream-filled consciousness wasn't a sign of primitive development. It was a unique and precious gift that the galaxy desperately needed. 6 months had passed since the wormhole experiment, and Seoul Interstellar University had become an entirely different place. The hallways that once echoed with the quiet. Conversations of separated species now buzzed with mixed groups of humans and aliens working together on joint projects. Jaewon walked across the campus on a warm spring morning, carrying a bag full of research proposals. He was no longer the struggling student who had felt out of place among advanced alien civilizations. Now he was co-director of the newly established Center for Consciousness Studies, working alongside Professor Yoon and representatives from 12 different species. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had taken months of careful collaboration, patient explanation, and gradual acceptance for the galactic community to fully embrace the implications of human consciousness. In the cafeteria, Jaewon sat with his usual group, but the composition had changed dramatically. Keth was there as always, his crystalline skin now displaying complex patterns that mixed logical structures with creative spirals. Nira had become a regular member of their group, fascinated by the way human and alien minds could complement each other. Even Vox, the Nexus student who had once dismissed human intelligence, now joined their discussions regularly. The applications are endless, Vox was saying, his cybernetic components glowing with excitement. Yesterday, I worked with Chamin Seo on a legal framework for artificial intelligence rights. My computational analysis provided the logical structure, but her intuitive understanding of consciousness helped us address ethical dimensions I had never considered. Nira nodded enthusiastically. The same thing happened in my xenobiology research. When I collaborate with Lee Sohee, her unconscious pattern recognition helps identify biological relationships that formal analysis misses. We've discovered 3 new principles of interspecies compatibility. Keth's skin showed pleased blue patterns. The integration of different consciousness types is producing results none of us could achieve alone. We are not just adding human creativity to alien logic. We are creating entirely new forms of collaborative thinking. This was the real revolution that had emerged from Jaewon's midnight equation writing. It wasn't just about proving that humans were intelligent in their own way. It was about discovering that intelligence itself was far more varied and powerful than anyone had imagined. The changes extended far beyond the university. Across the galaxy, mixed species research teams were solving problems that had seemed impossible for centuries. Human dream consciousness was being paired with alien analytical abilities to tackle everything from climate restoration to interstellar diplomacy. I got another message from the Andromedan Council, Jaewon told his friends. They want to establish exchange programs with Earth universities. They're calling it the Consciousness Diversity Initiative. How many requests is that now? Asked Park Hyun-woo, who had been documenting the flood of interest from galactic institutions. 47 different civilizations, Jaewon replied. Some of them traveled thousands of light years just to study how human minds work. But the attention wasn't always comfortable. Jaewon still remembered the early days when alien researchers had treated humans like fascinating laboratory subjects. It had taken months of negotiation to establish that humans were partners in consciousness research, not just specimens to be studied. The breakthrough had come when human students began helping alien species understand their own minds better. Jaewon's unconscious problem-solving had inspired Keth to explore non-logical thinking patterns. Other humans had helped different species discover creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence they didn't know they possessed. We're not just teaching them about human consciousness, Professor Yoon had explained. We're helping them expand their understanding of consciousness in general. This reciprocal learning had transformed the dynamic between humans and aliens from teacher-student to true collaboration. After lunch, Jaewon walked to his afternoon seminar, Advanced Applications of Multimodal Consciousness. The class had a waiting list of over 300 students from across the galaxy, all eager to learn how different types of minds could work together. The classroom was unlike anything from his early days at the university. Instead of floating in isolation working on individual problems, students collaborated in mixed species teams. Humans provided creative insights while aliens handled systematic analysis. The results were consistently more innovative and practical than either group could produce alone. Today we're going to tackle urban planning for a multi-species colony, announced Professor Zeth, who had become one of the strongest advocates for consciousness diversity after initially resisting the concept. The colony will house humans, Verlians, Delph, and Nexus citizens. Your task is to design a city that meets the unique needs of all 4 species. Jaewon found himself working with a team that included Keth, a young Delph engineer named Reef, and a Nexus urban planner called Grid. 6 months ago, such a mixed team would have been almost impossible to coordinate. Now it felt natural. Humans will need spaces for recreation and social gathering, Jaewon suggested, letting his mind wander through possibilities. But not just logical, functional spaces, places that feel alive and inspire creativity. Grid's cybernetic processors immediately began calculating optimal layouts. I can design efficient traffic flow and resource distribution based on those requirements. Reef added the aquatic perspective. Delph citizens need water access throughout the city, but not just for biological needs. Water features can also serve aesthetic and recreational purposes for all species. Keth's contribution was the most interesting. Verlian crystal technology could create buildings that respond to the emotional states of their inhabitants. The architecture itself could adapt to promote the type of consciousness needed for different activities. As they worked, Jaewon realized how much had changed. 6 months ago, he had struggled to understand basic navigation problems while aliens solved them effortlessly. Now he was collaborating as an equal partner, contributing insights that his teammates valued and built upon. The city design they created was revolutionary. Instead of separate districts for each species, they developed integrated neighborhoods where different types of consciousness complemented each other. Human creativity zones were paired with Verlian meditation gardens. Delph water districts flowed through Nexus computational centers. The city itself became a living example of consciousness diversity. Excellent work, Professor Zeth announced as teams presented their designs. These colonies represent something new in galactic civilization. Truly integrated multi-species communities designed around consciousness compatibility rather than just biological needs. That evening, Jaewon returned to his dormitory room to find a message waiting that made him stop in amazement. It was from the Galactic Education Council, offering him a position as Director of Consciousness Studies for the entire galaxy. They want me to travel to different worlds, helping establish programs that integrate human dream consciousness with alien analytical thinking, he told Keth excitedly. Keth's skin displayed complex patterns of pride and sadness. It is a tremendous honor. You would become one of the most influential educators in galactic history. But I'd have to leave Earth, leave this university, leave. Jaewon paused, realizing what he was about to say. Leave my friends. They sat in comfortable silence, both thinking about how much their relationship had changed. 6 months ago, Keth had seen Jaewon as a primitive being who needed patient guidance. Now he saw him as an equal partner whose unique perspective made them both better thinkers. What will you do? Keth asked. Jaewon looked around their shared room, remembering the night when everything had changed. The desk where he had unconsciously written revolutionary equations, the bed where he had learned to trust his dreaming mind, the space where he had discovered that being different was actually being valuable. I think I'll stay here for now, he decided. There's still so much to learn about how different types of consciousness work together. And I like being part of a team rather than traveling alone. Keth's skin glowed with happiness. I am glad. Our collaboration has taught me things about my own mind that I never knew existed. As the semester ended, Jaewon reflected on the incredible journey from struggling student to consciousness researcher. But the most important change wasn't in how others saw him, it was in how he saw himself in his place in the universe. Humanity had joined the galactic community, feeling like primitive newcomers trying to catch up with advanced civilizations. Now they were recognized as bringing unique and essential capabilities that enriched everyone's understanding of intelligence and consciousness. The final scene of Jaewon's story took place in the same classroom, where he had first struggled with quantum navigation, but now the dynamic was completely reversed. Alien students listened carefully as he explained how unconscious processing could solve problems that conscious analysis couldn't touch. The key is learning to trust your mind's ability to work in ways you don't consciously understand, he told a mixed group of human and alien students. Intelligence isn't just about computation or logic. It's about creativity, intuition, and the willingness to explore consciousness in all its forms.